Welcome to the Lifewriting podcast, where married authors and screenwriters Stephen Barnes
and Tananarive do talk about writing during stressful times, breaking into Hollywood, and balancing life.
every week will share more tips on how to build a better life while you create your dream projects.
Even if it's only at the rate of one sentence a day. Life writing is the application of the tools of writing to life and the tools of life to your writing.
Hey, so I'm going to give us some applause. Oh wait, no, I can't because I didn't share my sound yet.
Yeah,
but anyway, later we'll applause
Yay!
ourselves. I'll share my sound for our guests, and then we'll just clap for ourselves because we have had quite the morning.
Whew. Well, it's been a fascinating weekend. It's been a good weekend. I was spun.
I
needed extra
mean,
sleep over the weekend. Felt stressed out. Needed to talk to friends. Why don't you tell us what it was specifically that created the sense of overload this weekend?
Well, gosh, I'm so used to being afraid of jinxes and afraid to say anything. But if you're listening to this podcast, and you have for the past few weeks, we know that we've been in negotiations to place one of my centerpiece books for television development. And it was the kind of thing where it was sitting around. We got it back from a film studio that had tried to do it as a feature. We weren't sure what to do next, but we did know that we wanted to be a part of the creative process. That's like the one thing we knew, is that we did not want to be shut out of the creative process, not just for financial or ego reasons, but because we also both strongly agreed that that's the best way to get the thing made, the best way for this project to succeed. And literally out of the blue, we got an inquiry from a very strong company. And before we knew it, it was like every week there was a new company trying to jump in this thing, and a bidding war was starting. Like people trying, I mean, big names, big names in terms of studios, leaning into the camera. We're looking for something just like this, which was so weird after 18 months of pitching, where we're the ones leading in the camera, trying to get people to get excited about what we're pitching. It's like,
It's a fascinating difference between trying to get people to do something with you and those same studios trying to get you to do something with them. I mean, it really is like flipping a switch. And
weird,
you gotta
man.
have the experience of them throwing all of that star power and potential money and all the names that they drop in terms of who they can hook you up with and what they've done. It's hallucinating.
And then one
Hallucinatory.
company is like, they meet it with us, and they're like, they want to meet again. This time, let's have the president of the company on the phone. And, like, okay, what's happening here? And we thought we had made up our minds. Like Friday afternoon, all the smoke was clearing. There was a clear favorite. And then at the last hour, like out of nowhere, a company that my reps hadn't even really had on their radar came in with a good offer, like at the last minute. So we had a quick meeting this morning, and, one day we'll be able to tell you how it all plays out. Right now, it's not signed, it's not official. We have made a decision, but it was a tough one. This new company actually was a way closer number two than any of the other companies we had talked to. So it was an interesting development at the last hour.
I felt uncomfortable by Friday evening and then on Saturday. And I realized that sense of overwhelm. And I thought that it would be a useful thing to interrogate.
Yeah, unpack that. What do you mean when you say what's causing that sense of overwhelm, honey?
Well, it's always, fear in a way is at the base of such emotions generally. But, it could be stress, like I'm afraid that this is going to go wrong, or there's always a possibility that you're afraid that things are going to go right, because instances like this, situations like this, can be life changing. The amount of money that exists in Hollywood when you can navigate all of the gates, all the paths, is just intoxicating. I mean, it's ridiculous. It feels disproportionate to the work that is done, except it's not, because you're not
Oh no,
factoring
it's not.
in all of the work you did to get to the position where you have access. You have the skills, you have the neural net of allies, et cetera, et cetera. You have an understanding of the map of the territory such that you know what it's going to take for you to traverse it, and how fast how long it's going to take you to get there, and how to increase your pace of action or sustain a pace of action. Um, so I had to go through a lot of asking myself questions. Who is the person who I believe could successfully pull this off if this works? What is the gap between who I am and the person I believe could accomplish this? And how do I close that gap? What are the things that would change in my life positively or negatively if this happens? Why is it that there is this sudden sense of disruption? Uh, what's the difference between this and the steps that came before? The conclusion I came to was that the work necessary to perform at this level has been done, but there is still discomfort. There is still, the awareness that, oh my God, we're actually opening the door that we've been trying to reach for decades.
I mean,
Um,
really, honestly, and listeners will know this. We talked about our first argument, our first real argument as a couple was literally when we were trying to write an outline for this project, even before we got married. So we have been sitting with this one for a very long time.
it might be useful to discuss when we got married. One of the first things that we understood was the potential for unity, for corporate action, for the two of us as a team to accomplish things that neither of us could accomplish separately, or that it would be more fun or faster, to accomplish together. But there is a very real thing, the one hit wonder, notion, the what is it that made the band break up notion, just when they were reaching success, that there aren't a lot of husband wife writing teams. I suspect that part of that is because you're confusing the personal and the business and the creative, that it's a bigger load. If you're just partnered with somebody, you can break up with them if things aren't going well, and you can walk away with no harm, no foul. If you're married to them, especially if you've got a family, children, you have to ask yourself different questions about what you're doing and what it's worth. So, one of the first things that we decided when we got together was, how are we going to do this? So the rules that we came up with, one of the rules was the relationship always comes first.
Yeah, but you know what? It's tough. It's tough to live by that sometimes when you're getting into those down and dirty creative decisions, conversations, you're not seeing the same thing, you're frustrated with the process. So we've been through some ups and downs, and I'm not going to go into details again, but this week, even before this great thing happened in terms of the bidding war, as the great bidding war of 2022, as I'll call it, um, was that we had a conversation, a creative conversation that could have been very difficult, even 6 months to a year ago. And because we had that conversation, and we both did so great in the conversation that we've both grown. We can see how we've grown having that conversation. Because we'd had that conversation, I think we're feeling that much more confident that we can rise to this moment and all of its opportunities and all of its uncertainties, that we do have the capacity to hear each other, that we can continue to partner even as the scenarios change and the stakes change. And our favorite catchphrase is, we are what? Let's say it together.
We
We are
are
that
that
bitch.
bitch. That's
That's right.
right.
We are that bitch. So
And one of the things that has changed over the last few years is we have a much better circle of allies. It
yes.
isn't just that we communicate with each other better. The team of people that we have around us to advise us and help us through this, not just a top notch lawyer, not just solid agents, a manager, but friends.
Yeah.
People who, some of whom we've had on this show, who we can call up or get together for dinner with and talk about what we're going on. And one of the things that they reminded us of was it's a business of relationships, and the what you're looking for is who is the person who can shepherd you through the process. Who's the ally? That's really important. That executive that you bring in. Another thing is that there are times when you look at the difference between two contracts and the dollars are different. And the question you have to ask yourself is, do you trust yourself?
Yeah, that was it.
You
This deal is betting on ourselves.
Yeah, this deal
Betting
is betting
on
on ourselves
ourselves.
because there's one thing is, on signing, there's more money, if it doesn't sell,
Right.
because of the money that's loaded up front. But if you do sell the project, then there's more money on the back end. What do you go for? The money, the bird in the hand, or do you trust yourself? Kind of this is the time to say, I believe we can do this. With
We've
these
got
other
this.
people, the other deals, the other companies. We were trusting other people largely to take us through the process. And we had to kind of flinch at times about some of the choices they made and the ways they wanted to do things. This time, it's me and Tananarive.
This is it. This is what we've been waiting for since, like I said, before we got married. This is
That's
the
right.
opportunity. We have won the right to write our own scripts, and it was a hard fought right. And let's
Producer, you were executive producer on a show that was broadcast, which gives us more leverage
and
in
that
terms of.
Twilight Zone episode didn't hurt,
Yeah,
and all that
so in,
stuff.
in terms of writing, in terms of production, in terms of communication, in terms of all these different things, we're not the same people. And this is, I'll tell you that this was one of the things that I wanted, one of the reasons I wanted to make our own short film, Danger Word, because I knew that on the other side of doing Danger Word, we'd be producers, not just writers. And
Right,
that
right.
leads to other things.
Yeah, and this is all so exciting, and I can't wait for us to bring in our guest who is in the green room, because she is also on a journey where she's doing very, very new and exciting things, and I can't wait for her to tell all about it. But before that, let me tell you a little bit about who our guest is. She is the editor of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. She's also one of the writers tapped by Janelle Monáe, that's right, the Afrofuturism superstar, to participate in this really unique project called the Memory Librarian and Other Stories of the Dirty Computer, which is when Monáe and this cohort of writers are bringing Afrofuturism to life on the page. And I also was included with this guest in Tales from Wakanda, Black Panther Tales of Wakanda, edited by Jesse Holland, which again, that was where you brought in and you come up with a story. And I know she was very excited about that. We both were, but an award-winning writer, poet, and editor in her own right. 9 Bar Blues, Stories from an Ancient Future, came out in May 2020, first all prose collection, and the author of 2 multi-genre hybrid collections called Sleeping Under the Tree of Life, is the first one, and Shotgun Lullabies. Okay. And also, I have to say, groundbreaking, absolutely groundbreaking, as the editor of Dark Matter, the first Black speculative fiction anthology. So please welcome the incredible Sheree Renée Thomas to the show. Come on in. Come on in. Yes, that's all for you. That's all for you from our studio audience.
Our
Sheree,
vast studio audience. It's crowded. Standing room only.
it's as usual, it's just so good to see you. I mean, all of our guests are people I would just like to be visiting with, but we happen to have mics. So that's the only difference.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so excited for you all. Congratulations on this whirlwind weekend.
It's been amazing.
It's
A lot
been
of
a
serious
ride.
conversation, a lot of meditation, a lot of asking for divine guidance and guidance from the deepest parts of us.
And I'm sure I'm sorry if
No,
I interrupted you,
no,
but Sheree,
please.
I'm sure you can relate, because you've been out here slugging for a long, long time. And you are undergoing a personal renaissance in your own life and career. I mean, it looks that way to me from the outside. I certainly hope that's how you're experiencing it, where you're having those moments where you get those calls or those invitations and you're like, what just happened? Have you been having those kinds of reactions? Can you discuss it?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's been a series of what this is not spam. This is not a mistake.
Right?
Yeah, you have to I was talking to one of the Memory Librarian collaborators, Alaya Don Johnson, and Alaya says that a lot of the email that she receives goes into her spam box, and her invitation for this went into her spam box, but she checks it regularly, so she was able to
Oh, great.
find it. And when I received my invitation, I looked at it and I was like, this is interesting. Oh, they're not asking me to recommend someone else. They actually want me to do this. As an editor, you're usually the collaborative, coach, you're rounding up talent for projects, but this was one where they asked me to do it. So I was
All you, baby.
excited. Yeah.
All you. Well, you deserve, and I know you're excited about Black Panther 2 and editing. I mean, how would you characterize this era of Afrofuturism?
Oh, it's a reemergence. I mean, because it felt like you all have been writing and working for so very long, and I was watching something that Stephen was saying that at one point you lived across the street from Octavia Butler.
Down the street. No, I was about 5 blocks away. Easy walking distance.
Walking distance. So I know it's a long journey for many people, and so to me, we were super excited when in the 90s when we got on the scene. But this to me is a reemergence, because now it's a larger conversation. It's a more global conversation than it seemed to be at first. And multimedia. So
yes.
In the background there, that was the house where Octavia lived at that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
People can't see it, but he just put it up on his screen. I'll do the walkthrough. But
I wanted to make sure we have a unique opportunity. This is the first time we've had the editor of a magazine on here, and the process that we discuss with people, that we teach with people about writing, involves writing short stories. We feel it is the most efficient way of crossing the line from being an unknown and unpublished writer to being published. That stop before you try to do a full book, or certainly try to get into Hollywood. Unless you live here and have good connections, that's tough. But selling short stories, you have specialized knowledge about what an editor is looking for that would allow a newbie writer to get into the field. If you could talk about, what rules do you suggest for people who are trying to break into writing? Because that's the beginning of all this. All these things that are happening with you, all the things that are happening with us, it begins with writing, and writing something that somebody will want to give you money for. Mm. So talk to us a little bit about the editor's eye in terms of the business of what are you looking for? How can people optimize their chances of success with somebody like you?
For short stories, which is the area that's my joy and the lane that I love probably the most, if you're trying to submit your work to a particular publication, it is critical that you read the publication. I know that writers are very special and have you must have a very strong ego and confidence while also being very vulnerable at the same time, and developing a thick skin. So a lot of times people think, well, if my writing is good, it doesn't matter if I've read the magazine, because they're just going to like it because it's good. But each publication has its own audience and aesthetic, and it has its own history. The Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction will be 73 years old this October. And so that legacy has changed over the years of the different editors that they've had. And I'm the 10th editor and the second woman and the first person of color, period. The only black woman. So my aesthetic is not going to be the same as Charlie Finley's was, or the same as Chris, or our publisher Gordon Van Gelder, or Ed Furman, who is still reading and alive on the planet with us, right? Watching his legacy continue to grow, and so on. So you have to read what you are trying to be a part of. Some cases you won't know because it's a call for submissions, like an anthology, and it's just a theme. And then you're just, you dive in, lean into who you are, what makes your voice special, and what you think will make a story that will stand out for readers. You know what I mean? If there's a water anthology, everybody and their mom's going to send a mermaid story, right? So if you're going to do that, then make sure yours is one that no one's ever read before, or lean into something different than that. For FNSF, the most important thing, I think, is for you to find out what makes me tick. And I'm still exploring that too as an editor, having only been an editor of the publication officially for 1 year, right? I have editorials where I talk about it. You can follow the magazine. I don't write a lot of personal stuff in the magazine. Most of my personal stuff is on my personal account, but be aware I'm a Black woman with, grown Black children in the world. So I'm not always writing about science fiction and fantasy. That's not my timeline all the time. I'm interested in the world that we live in. And so I'm always engaging with that. I'm Southern. So just one, find the publication, read it, see if it's a good fit for you, because it may not be. You might not like the status of a publication, you might like the reach of it, but does it really fit what you're trying to do, right? So think about that. And then the next thing you want to do is to read the call for submissions, which is so basic, but I cannot tell you, if we received like thousands of submissions a month, and the fact that it's so very clear from just reading the first page that people aren't reading the submissions is very sad. You already bring me into a space of skepticism, because I'm already feeling like I'm going to get something I can't do anything with. And at this point, when I have 1,500 submissions coming in and I have a group of readers, but we still got to go through all of these submissions, and I've got to look at everything to see what I want to actually, ask to be rewritten, or see if I want to actually acquire. I'm still reading all of this stuff. You're just making it easier for me to send you a rejection letter, a form rejection letter at that, right?
Let me ask, I'm sorry. That is great. And I'm hanging on your every word. And I hope the listeners are too. Those of you who are submitting stories, you've been there a year, but knowing you, I have a feeling that in that year, you have already accomplished something that you are super proud of. Can you just tell me something that pops up for you that you're proud of, even in the short time you've been there?
Oh my gosh, I hadn't even had time to think about that, because it never ends. The submissions never end. And no matter what's happening, I'm reading submissions and producing the magazine. But
I know you're opening doors for a lot of writers.
Yeah, I think we probably have had the most diverse issues of FNSF in their entire history. I think that's probably happened. And when I say diverse, I mean intergenerational. I mean, countries from around the world, and I mean women, and I mean people of color, and Black writers in particular. I think my May-June issue last year was probably the Blackest issue they ever had, from page 1 to page last. And it was, excellent, I have to say. So my whole goal is just to show that you can do a wonderful magazine and not necessarily be, every veteran of the world. It doesn't have to always be, writers who we've already known, for 40, 50 years. You can also take a chance on new voices, and their work can stand up just as strongly next to the writers we already love and cherish. So I've been just trying to create more opportunities, professional opportunities, because when you publish with FNSF, it is a professional market. It has an impact not only on your writer's fee that you receive, but also on your ability to join the Writers Guilds. You have an opportunity to join the Science Fiction Writers Association. You have an opportunity to join Horror Writers of America and other publications based on it being that market. So opening that door up for more writers who might not have that opportunity, or it might take them a very long time to have that opportunity. I'm pretty excited about that.
Might not have dreamed of it.
Yeah.
One of the debates right now is around the term woke. That there are people, the puppies, as they're often referred to, who have an objection to the changing nature of science fiction, in the sense of being interested in different social aspects than during the golden age of science fiction, which is generally when somebody was 12. What do you think about that debate, and how do you address it in your own choices?
When you use that term woke in the way that it was not designed to be used, you're already telling me something about you. And it might not be something you want to tell me, but you've already told me something about it.
What does it tell?
My husband says you basically call it, it's basically using the N-word without using the N-word. It's like a very slick, trick of semantics, where you are letting us know a lot about what you value and what you don't value, right? So if to represent the actual world that we live on, in which actually whiteness is a minority on the planet Earth, and there are so many other cultures, which are mostly Black and brown, to be honest, right? Then you're telling me that you are invested in not necessarily realism. You're invested in a fantasy of that doesn't really serve our art, right? If you put on blinders to all the other wonderful contributions that are being made in the world from other people, you know. And if we're just talking about America, and just America in particular, of course, we have submissions from around the world and published people from around the world. But if we're just talking about America, you're losing so much of the beauty of storytelling that's a part of our culture as a nation.
Right.
And
they're trying to imply,
I love that. I agree.
they're trying to imply that if you do this, if you depict the world as it is, if you genuinely are invested in the future and you're genuinely asking these questions, the expression "get woke, go broke." They're trying to convince people that nobody wants this. Nobody wants reality. Nobody wants the world to be represented as it actually is. Go back to the fantasies that comforted me, that the whole world revolves around me and my family, and people look like me. I consider that to be not just negative, but childish. It's a refusal to be mature. And I think that the people who try to create depictions of societies in their stories that are not realistic about what we really are in terms of things like race and gender and sexual orientation and cultures, they're going to be consigned to the dustbin of literary history. You know, they're dinosaurs, and I feel sorry for them. They're just controlled by their fear and afraid of future shock.
I feel bad about that too, because think about it. I mean, the science fiction and fantasy readers and horror readers often pride themselves on having this expansive view of the world, right? And they pat themselves on the back at conferences and things on being, more, evolved than some other parts of society, because they have this connection to the imagination, and they're very deeply rooted in that. But if you can't imagine the world that we actually live in right now, and you can't extrapolate that into a future, and you don't feel secure in that, it actually, fills you with fear. There is something else that you have to explore, and science fiction is not going to necessarily help you with that.
Yeah, at least for your problems.
In a lot of
We
cases,
have other problems,
In a lot of cases, they believe that if a person who's not a white heterosexual male is depicted in a story or in a movie, that's affirmative action. That they can't believe that either just because you're trying to depict society as it is, or that a person could get into that position based upon their merits. The notion that you got your job because of your merits, anyone who's going to say, well, they're just trying to be woke, is saying that you couldn't have done that without that. They're also not looking at all of the white males that were in that position, and they're not saying that those people were hired because of a form of affirmative action. Mm-hmm. They all earned it. But if you don't look that way, then it has to be because somebody is making a political point. Once again, that's the calling you the N-word without using the N-word. They can't believe that the values, the worth could be there independent of somebody's politics. It's pretty sad.
I have a word for such folks. Y'all need to wake up. Because the world is rolling over and past you at this point. I've been enjoying books, movies about people who didn't look like me my whole life. Right. and it's a thing. It's actually a thing. It's a thing that you can do and expand our vision of what the country and world look like to something that is not, as Sheree put it so well, so a fantasy.
It's not get woke, go broke, but stay asleep, be a creep.
And I want to talk about this dynamic power of what we call Afrofuturism. It has different names. The cultural critic Mark Derry coined the term in the early 90s, basically observing a phenomenon that was already underway in work, literature, film, music, conversations between Black artists, much of it future facing, dealing with the digital divide and stuff like that. But as I teach Afrofuturism at UCLA, it's really the speculative arts, the Black speculative arts of the African diaspora. I have a very broad definition of Afrofuturism that would include African futurism and would include, you know, artists like Nalo Hopkinson, who's writing out of myths, you know, and the Caribbean. I've always been so fascinated by Janelle Monáe's interest in Afrofuturism. I don't know if our listeners know this, but if you look up Janelle Monáe on Twitter, she literally has another name she goes by, which is Cindy Mayweather. Cindy Mayweather is a character she created. It's an android who appears in many of her earlier music videos, and androids being a metaphor for slavery and creating them in whatever image we like and this kind of thing. And she's just been on this. She has been on this throughout her career. I teach her obviously in my Afrofuturism class, but I was so excited that this book, The Memory Librarian, is out now because I teach Dirty Computer. If you haven't seen Dirty Computer, it's free and it's available on YouTube, and just watch it. It has a great music and a interstitial storytelling. But tell me about meeting her, what she was like, what the vision of this project is. What's it like to be a part of it? Because I follow you on Instagram, so I know you were just at a publicity event.
Oh yeah, so we just finished the first part of a book tour. So that was so exciting. They flew from Memphis to New York, which is my other home. Obviously, a lot of my publishing career took place in New York. I raised my my eldest here, definitely, for sure. And my youngest and I went back to Memphis at some point. But we had our first event at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, which was wonderful. There were 1,300 people there. They already had their books. It was just amazing. I don't think I've ever stood in front of an audience, a reading audience that was that large. So that was amazing. I was very nervous. Danny Lore was there. There are 5 collaborators with Janelle Monáe. So there is Aliyah Dawn Johnson, who wrote The Memory Librarian. There is Danny Lore, who wrote Nevermind. There is Eve L. Ewing, who wrote, oh my gosh, I always
I'm so impressed you remember these names. This is like, what? That's the editor in you. I'm sorry.
Time Box, obviously. How could I forget Time Box? Johanka Delgado, who wrote Save Changes, and me, Sheree Renée Thomas, who wrote Time Box Altered. So there are 5 stories, and of course, the beautiful introduction. And it was just amazing. I kept looking up, and the lights made me nervous. And then I kept seeing the balcony, and it was like, oh, there are people up at the top. There are people at the top. And I've been.
How many people were there total?
Yeah.
1,300.
1,300 people.
That's great. That's
for
great.
the first event. And I think the Washington, D.C. one was sold out as well. And then there was Atlanta events and Chicago.
We'd love to have all you guys on the podcast.
Hey, how about that?
We'd love to do a show
I think they would love that.
around this project.
Put a bug in their ear. We can make room.
Francisco,
We're a little busy, but we can make a little bit of room for Janelle if she's willing to work with us on that. But what?
Reach out to the Wonderland team. I'll get you in touch with Kyle Dargan, our wonderful editorial director, who coordinated all of us during the pandemic through the Zooms and everything. Janelle was wonderful to me, and it's very cool because you already know, like you said, she's a lifelong science fiction fan. And that was another thing that kind of struck me was that, when you're out here, you're doing your work. I mean, I know you all have encountered your fans many, many, many times. And Tananarive knows my mom loves your work. But you don't know who else might be fans of your work, right? And you don't know who else in other spheres who have your books on their shelves as well. And so, these works, this science fiction work that she's been reading and exploring and thinking about, comes rooted with her, spending time with her grandmother, from Mississippi, and watching, Twilight Zone and eating meals with her grandmother and just being in that world. So when she's creating her own work, from my understanding, when she was creating Cindy Mayweather, all of that history, and her also being a writer when she was in high school, all of that informed her art. and how she wanted to change the mold of what a Black woman singer could be, right? And the kinds of genres that she could perform in and how she presented herself. So it's a lot of like, innovative work that she had to do to kind of go against the grain of it. And being a science fiction fan and reader, I think, probably helped, make that a natural process for her as a musician to know that there are things that you can, build your own world and draw upon these other worlds, German Impressionism and, the concept of the robot and, and to bring in,
Yeah, Metropolis. She named her first album, Metropolis, after the 1920s. I forget the director, but yeah, she's.
Yeah, Fritz Lee, what's it, Fritz?
Lang.
Fritz Lang. Yeah, I mean, she's all in it all the way up and through it. And I love that this is a collaborative process and that she brought in all of these other writers. I mean, what could be better than that? What could be better?
I mean, she's like beautiful. You see her skin is just as popping as it is in the videos. She's gorgeous. She's like, she's very gracious. She's very smart, obviously very brilliant, and just very funny. Also very funny and kind. And just seeing her, the way she moves with her team and how they work together was because she was, like you said, a community person. She started her art with an artist collective, the Wonderland Arts Society, and I think they were doing all their things in Atlanta at the time. She's from a big family. She told us she had 49 first cousins because
Whoa.
She's got a big family. So she's used to doing things in a communal way. So this was very unusual because I wasn't sure initially if we were going to be ghostwriting, if we were going to be like, what's happening? Because that's totally different money, right? You're like, what are we doing? And I've ghostwritten before, and I wasn't sure. I wasn't actually interested in doing that again. But when I found out that there was a collaborative process and that we would be, creating work with her in her world, in her imagination, in the Dirty Computer world, which I got to see her perform live in Memphis during, when she was on tour for Dirty Computer before the pandemic. It was just wonderful, So yeah.
That is great. It sounds like you're doing a lot of traveling and I know a little bit from experience, as exciting as it is when you're a part of these larger projects, like you're working with a Marvel project or you're working with Janelle Monáe, you still need to sort of keep a piece of yourself for you, right?
Oh my God, yes.
So let's move to that piece.
Talk a little bit about self-care.
Yeah.
For the artist. These broadcasts they're just friendly conversations in one way, but in another way, we would like to help prospective artists understand not just how to do their best art, but how to survive the process, how to navigate both the business and the creative landscape, but also taking care of themselves, their relationships, their families, that core, because any industry will eat all of you that you offer to it. If you don't hold things back for yourself, you don't remember where you came from, where all this originated, they will eat you, spit you, just chew you up and spit out the bones and then say, oh, I'm sorry, you're not as good as you used to be. You're not as fresh as you used to be. We're going to move on to the next one. So what have you been experiencing in terms of stress and how do you handle it?
For me, it's being public in a way that I'm not accustomed to being public. Like I'm on social media, but I'm not like the social media diva. I'm no Daniel Jose Older, I'm not on TikTok. I'll have a band and soundtrack behind me, choreograph moves and stuff. It's just not a natural thing. If I had known that we had to do all this as a writer, I don't even know if I would have continued. I still had this very ancient ideal of what it means to be a writer, which is you write the work somewhere private and quiet, and then you send it to your publisher, and then they publish it, and then readers interact with it. And every now and then you might interact with a reader if they happen to, you happen to encounter them, but not necessarily being like a part of your everyday thing. So being public in a way, like with a magazine, like constantly being on Front Street with very strange people. I'm just going to say that. Very strange people who have no country common sense sometimes. Like some things, you were asking me earlier about what to do with if you want to publish in a place. Well, don't piss off your editor. That's the first thing. Like treat it like a job interview. You want a job, you're not going to go in there and talk crazy to the person that's interviewing you or to your, proposed supervisor or team. You're going to want to be a team player. So, some of the, like the entitlement that I've seen in some of these letters that I received, it's just been fascinating. Let's put it like that. So
give us a bad example. Give us an example of something that hit you and where you just really said, what is wrong with this person?
No names.
Oh, okay. No names, but somebody, I only send out a personal rejection letter if I actually, one, feel like it's going to be useful to you. And if it's something I feel like that will help just move you along in the next thing. And then the story was just enough there, or you've submitted enough times where I felt like, I see a progress, but you keep doing this. So let me just tell them in case no one else does, or tell them that this thing. Then you get a letter back, saying,
Uh-oh.
All this other stuff of what they meant to do and da, 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 da. No, that's not, you don't need all that. You don't need all that. Or I got a letter once from someone that said, oh, I've been a subscriber this long, and these issues, you have this many relationships that are homosexual and lesbian and da, 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 da. And I was like, dude.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I read this letter and then they're like, but I don't mean no harm, and I'm not homophobic. I was like, I said, let me ask you to do something. When you can go back and look at the 72 years of publishing and count how many cis, heterosexual relationships that are explored in the stories, and that number is somehow less than the number of stories that you've just read, then we can have a conversation.
Oh my goodness.
Otherwise, keep this foolishness out my box. Like, I'm just not there for that. The other thing is people, like, they have a sense that I just arrived from the sky, dropped from the moon into the community, and not a sense that I became a part of fandom and science fiction the way that they did. That has some different story involved, because they just don't see us as being a part of the community. And I'm just like, I always say this, but it's because it's true. My family has at least contributed to one tiny King family vacation at some point in his career with the volume of books that we published over the years. We are part of that invisible bottom line, So, postal workers or whatever might not be able to take off time to go to a big world convention and spend thousands of dollars with their entire family to go there and be present, so you can see that Black people are part of fandom.
Right.
But we're at home buying those books. You know what I'm saying?
Talking to each other,
so,
watching.
So
I'd like to make sure that we get a little specificity. When you feel overwhelmed, when you feel like all of this media stuff is knocking you off center, how do you get back on track? What's your go-to? If you had 3 suggestions for this is how I keep from going insane or getting sick, what are they?
I've been better at shutting off the computer, like just shutting it off. Like, I'm not getting notifications from Twitter or IG. I'm not getting emails, especially if this is the weekend. Good luck to you. I will see you on Monday or what have you. That's been very hard because it's not how I've operated before. But I've had to do it just to feel like I'm not, a rat in a wheel,
Yes.
I have a wonderful husband who's also a writer. So he completes.
What's his name? Tell us his name.
Oh, Danny and Daryl Jerry.
Yay.
And what's his most recent project? So we can just kind of give him a little shout out.
Oh, he has a story coming out in Africa Risen.
Good.
A new era of speculative fiction.
I'm in there.
A story in the Black Panther Tales of Wakanda.
Okay.
Yeah. And he's got a little chapbook that came out in Third Man Books in the Literarium machine that's in their new UK store in London.
What's the title?
I think it's Scars and Bars.
Okay.
Boy with the Golden Arm.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah. I love writing couples. That's wonderful. So you have like make sure you have a date night. You have date nights. Mutual. Giving back rubs, watching movies and popping popcorn together. Playing with each other's toes.
Absolutely. Walking. walking, being in the fresh air together, watching
Yes.
crazy movies.
Yes, yes. What's your favorite crazy movie that always gets you feeling like you?
Oh, well, I always laugh my ass off when I watch The Thing. I don't.
Oh, The Thing,
The
absolutely.
Thing. Is it
Yeah,
funny?
John
I love The
Carpenter.
Thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's funny? Wait, no, but I like it.
It's the funny parts in it. It's insane. And I couldn't believe, I only found out recently that the critics didn't like it. Like, I didn't know. I thought it was
No,
like
it was not
classic.
successful when it first came out.
Yeah, they don't know.
No
It
idea.
took time. Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
wow, I love that movie.
It was ahead of
wonderful.
its time. It was ahead of its time. And
It really
and speaking of ahead of its time, if I may segue,
There
I
you
want to go back, right? I want to go back to Dark Matter, which came out in 2000. And it was the first, as far as I know, Black speculative fiction anthology. And you can talk more about it, but I remember Steve and I having a conversation with Octavia Butler when we were at her house, and we were talking about Dark Matter, and you know, there had been some film inquiries or whatever, and then Octavia said, "But you know Hollywood," and we all laughed and laughed and laughed. So tell us about Dark Matter, where it started and where it's headed.
Oh well, it seems like Dark Matter started out of my desire to read for pleasure, right? I was working in I was working in book publishing. I was like editing books. I was editing Regency romances actually. So like this whole Bridgerton thing is like, whoa, Regency's on as a series. I love it. And I wasn't working in the science fiction division, right? It was just very difficult to get in those places, So I was in women's fiction and romance in One World, which was the multicultural imprint. And so when I would finish editing the romances in the day, I would go home and read science fiction. And I had read like all of your stuff that was out at the time. I read it. In fact, my mentor, Cheryl Woodruff, had given me your very first book. And so we were all excited. And I didn't see an anthology that has short fiction. And I kept thinking, oh, they must not have it. It must be out of print or something. I might have to go to Able Books or something, to go find it. And the book associate at Barnes and Noble, actually, I went there, because they have the big computers, they can look up stuff. And they're like, I don't see anything. I don't think it exists. I was like, what? And I kept thinking, I was like, all these, even the writers that I knew, that I could count on my little hands, surely we could put an anthology together, their work, but they didn't know where it was. So I left with a Japanese collection. So this story. I left with a collection that Martin Greenberg had translated from Japanese into English. And I woke up about 3 a.m. and I was like, damn, it doesn't exist. And yet people have taken time to translate other languages into science fiction and create anthologies, but they haven't done it. And so I just started thinking about it, and I just started jotting down some ideas. And it was like if I had a magic wand, who would I put in a book, right? Of short stories. And I kept thinking of my brothers, and I kept thinking of my cousins. I was like, if I had to introduce this work to someone who doesn't read it, they watch movies, or what have you, but they don't read it, who would I have? What stories of theirs? So I started just jotting down different, TOCs just to see what it would look like. And it went from there. I talked to Cheryl Woodruff. I talked to my agent at the time, Marie Dutton Brown, who was like, they were very supportive. They're like, it's a good idea. You should try it. You should do it. And it kind of just went from there. And that was 98.
And you got everybody. It was Octavia, me, Steve, Samuel R. Delaney, I believe, is in there as well. Correct? W.E.B. Du Bois, even. You rescued a story from 1920 called The Comet.
I pulled that right off my shelf. I just went to my bookshelf at home and I looked and I said, they don't think of these as science fiction. This is science fiction.
Girl, well, you put your foot in it.
That was important. You did an actually important thing in literature, Sheree.
And it's now been reissued, I believe, right? Or it's on Kindle
now. It's in print. Thank you. And it got digital. Thanks to you also.
Well, I just wondered, hey, what's going on with that? Because post Black Panther.
Before digital was a part of the boilerplate of the contracts, right? So first one didn't have any digital rights initially. And then I think you wanted to teach from, it's like, there's no digital. And, So thank you for that. Cause I had kind of let it, once it was out there, it won the 2 World Fantasy Awards, and it was the first time a Black writer, which I was so shocked. I was like, no one else has won this award.
I know it ain't the compliment it seems like at the time. It's like,
1975. That was so bizarre to me. I didn't even realize that until someone pointed it out. But and I think then they started like looking at the work right late after that. But it was just a lot. It's constantly being reintroduced to new audiences, so that's wonderful. And also to hear from people who will say either they're doing their dissertation on Afrofuturism, or doing dissertation on some of the writers, and it was one of the first books where they saw their work, or they had an idea of what it was that they were writing to. We have some indirect love stories, in the sense that I found out that one of the writers in the first collection, Pam Knowles, had a wonderful blog, right? That one of the columns that they wrote talked about, being a fan of science fiction, and, and their parents trying to steer them away from it because of, fearing that they would be impacted by racism and that kind of thing, and writing about that experience of seeing the first Star Wars movie and feeling kind of like not seen, like it was very whitewashed, right?
Yeah, there were no Black faces in Star Wars, the original Star Wars. So yeah.
And finding out that Matt Ruff, who wrote Lovecraft Country, read Pam's blog, because they were in Dark Matter, saw that planted a seed, and then some other experience that they had in college with the Green Book, being introduced to the concept of the Green Book guide to, where you can go travel as a Black person in America without
getting killed.
So wait a minute.
Getting killed. Planted the seed for him to write Lovecraft Country, the novel.
So you're saying you
I
created Lovecraft Country? Yeah.
No. I'm saying, damn, no.
No, I'm kidding. But you gave her that leg up. Anyway, it's also interconnected.
Yeah, it was like it was just kind of a community was building, and people were talking. We've had a Pulitzer Prize winner, like, National Book Award finalists and winners. Honorée Fanon Jeffers, her very first short story, I published it in Dark Matter, and now she's like the queen of literature.
Huge.
With the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois.
Oh yeah,
it's right next to the W.E.B. Du Bois story.
Look at those seeds.
That's amazing.
Amiri Baraka, gave us a blessing for his story of Ishmael Reed, who was very, very important to me as a poet, as a writer, particularly with Mumbo Jumbo and Yellow Radio Broke Down, and those kinds of books. All of those things really influenced me as a writer. Henry Dumas, having his work in there, thanks to Eugene Redman and his widow, Mrs. Dumas. A lot of, it was just a lot. And to see what these writers have been able to do in their careers over the years has been really wonderful.
What are you working on right now? What's next for you? What's next for Sheree that is just for your heart? What are you doing?
Oh, well, I'm working on a project that's just for me. Another project that I just wrote that I put all of my spirit in it is the Black Panther novel that's coming out this year. Yeah. So
what's it called? Let's plug it.
It's called Panther's Rage. Yeah.
Ooh,
Panther's Rage.
He mad.
Yeah.
Panther's
Rage.
Origin
story. It's like the first time he got his own arc in Marvel Comics. So
Very cool.
So I got to reimagine that for the.
When is that coming out?
That's coming out this summer. So
This summer?
That's great.
I wish you all the success in the world with that. I'm really excited about having you on here because, like I said, you're the first editor that we've had on, and what we've been doing with this thing called Lifewriting. It's the application of Joseph Campbell's model of the hero's journey to both writing stories, the process of writing stories, and the process of living life, so that what you learn about life fits into your stories, and what you do in your stories are actually working out problems that you actually care about in your life. So that first step of writing a short story. We'd say writing, write one sentence a day, write 1 to 4 short stories a month, and then polish them and submit them. And if you will do that consciously, you can get on that path to learning your voice, what you do. So having you here and with what you just said, we're going to want to extract from the things you said, rules that can help people to succeed, making that first step, getting that first publication. Our primary program, the sponsor of our podcast, is the Lifewriting Premium system. It's a year of weekly prompts and lessons, where all we ask is if you will promise to write 1 sentence a day and watch one of these videos a week, we can get you on that process. So T, say a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. This is all fantastic in terms of, especially the newer writers, absolutely pay attention to what Sheree is saying, know the marketplace. And if you're following the Life Writing program of a sentence a day, you can write a short story a month. You can write technically speaking, a novel a year, but you probably see the trick with the sentence a day is that our philosophy is it's much like eating potato chips. Once you do one, it's hard to stop. It's getting into the mood to write. Yes. Sometimes that holds us back from writing. And if we have a contract, that we can't lie to ourselves and say we don't have time to write 1 sentence. So that can really help pave the way.
You're just lying to yourself. You have time to write 1 sentence. And then what you get to do is interrogate, well, what's going on inside me that I won't let myself express creatively. So if you'd like to learn more about the Life Writing Premium program, just go to www.lifewritingpremium.com. We accept submissions for our hot seats, where we read the stories and analyze the stories in a group, in a group Zoom call, and we'll be doing that again soon. So we would love to have anybody who is interested in being a writer and is willing to do at least 1 sentence a day. We're here to help you.
So, and Sheree, it's been so great to talk to you. I won't call it a glow up because you've been glowing. You've been glowing. You've been glowing since day one. I mean, I don't even know if you mentioned how old you were, by the way. When you edited Dark Matter, you were a newbie. You were just in your 20s. You were a kid, right? So you've been in this business for a long time. You've been publishing your own work, but you've also created an environment where you can help other people get into the field and help the field be more inclusive, which is a gift to everyone, not just the inclusive or so-called diverse
the
writers.
Excluded.
Yeah, the FI writers, but everyone, because it's a bright, beautiful world out there. Why only see parts of it? See as much of it as you can. My hope for you is just that with all this excitement happening, you're still able to hear your sort of voices and write. Do you still love writing short stories yourself? You say that's your first.
I still do.
That's your home.
I still love writing short stories, but I've noticed I've been creeping at the longer limbs, writing novelettes and novellas. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, and you've heard it from someone who's been in the field for a long time. When we say write short stories, it's not a remedial assignment. They're not easy to write by any means, but they just generally can take less time just because of pure length of the story.
You don't have as much of yourself invested, so that if it gets rejected, it's not as much of a kick in the gut. It's like, well, by the time you get rejected, you should be on to your next story.
Yeah, you moved on. You're already writing something else. So we think it's a great way. And also you screenwriters, a lot of screenwriters try to jump into those features. Start with a short, 20 minutes or under, 20 pages or under. Get your feet under you.
With a filmmaker, local acting school, and actually, write a 1-act play and actually video it on your iPhone and post it on YouTube. If you've got some chops, show people you've got chops. And there are so many people who've gotten into the industry by putting themselves out there one way or the other. The doorways are so open now compared to what they used to be. It's not even funny. There's no comparison.
Yeah, it's the best time I've ever experienced for creators, especially in genre. So if you had any thoughts about it, the answer is yes. Jump in. So glad to have had you. Thank you for being here, Sheree Renée Thomas. You're so great. The Memory Librarian is her new project with Janelle Monáe. It just has such a great ring to it. I'm gonna just keep saying that, and also
turn the cover around. You're showing us the back of the book. Yes, there we
Memory
go. There we go.
Librarian, watch Dirty Computer to get yourself in the mood, and then do pick up your copy. And that Panther's Rage coming out this summer.
Sounds
Hello.
hot.
That sounds good too. And whatever else you're working on, we can't wait to hear about it. Thank you for being with us, everybody. Thank you for tuning in this week. Be sure to catch up on the previous podcasts we've had with other great Afrofuturists like Nalo Hopkinson. We had an interview excerpts from the late Octavia Butler and Kay Jemison. And as far as you all are concerned, go out and write the story of your lives.
That's right. Be the hero in the adventure of your lifetime.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.